All right, guys, so we're going to talk about rounding today, and I'm going to give you some rules to follow when you round. Okay, so let's look at rule number 1. Okay, it says underline the digit in the place you are rounding to. So if it's asking you to round to the hundreds place, underline the hundreds place, the number, the digit that's in the hundreds place. Okay, remember digits are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, then draw an arrow to the digit on the right. So let's look right here. It says we're going to round 132,246 to the nearest 10,000. So let's go, tell me what number, what digit is in the 10,000s place, Hudson? The 3. So we're going to underline the 3. Then we're going to draw an arrow to the digit on the right. So we're going to draw an arrow to that 2. That 2 is going to help us to determine what that 3 is going to round to. All right, so there's a little rhyme that you can think of. 4 or below, let it go. 5 or above, give it a shove. So y'all get that written. Okay, so let's talk about what this means. 4 or below, let it go. Keep the underlined digit the same and let go of the digits after it, replacing them with zeros. Okay, so if the digit to the right is 4 or below, so in this case it's 4 or below, right? Because the digit to the right is a 2. So that 3 would stay the same, and we're getting rid of the digits after that, and we're replacing it with a bunch of zeros. Okay? Any digits before the underlined number stay the same. So the 1 would stay the same. If it's 5 or above and we give it a shove, we're going to add 1 to the underlined digit. So you would add 1 to that 3. And you drop the digits after it, replacing those with zeros. And any digits before the underlined digit stays the same. So let's look at some examples. So we've got 132,246. Since we're rounding to the nearest 10,000, we know that this number is going to fall between 130,000 and 140,000. What would be that midpoint? What would be the midpoint? Kenny? 135. Not 35, 130,000. 500, right? Because let's see, this would be 131,000, 132,000. You see that? So that tipping point would be 135,000 and so forth. Now, anything 4 or below, so let's go back and look up here. This 2 is 4 or below, right? So that means that the 1 and the 3 are going to stay the same, and everything after that is going to be zeros. So 132,246 is going to round to 130,000. And if you look right here, 132,246, it'll probably be about right there, right? So it's going to drop down. We're going to round it to 130,000. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So on that blank page in your journal, Miss Anderson's going to get a blank page here. I'm going to show you another way that you could do some rounding, you can use number lines. So let's take this number line. We're going to take this number, 36,219. And I want you to round it. Can y'all see that? Here, hold on. Let me erase it real quick. And we're going to use white. Guys? Okay. So we're going to round 36,219. I want you to round it to the nearest thousand. So what number is in the thousands place? What number is in the thousands place?
6.
The 6. So we're going to underline the 6. We're going to draw an arrow to the number next to it. Okay, so I know that this number, I'm going to round it, and it's going to be between 36,000 and 37,000. Because I'm rounding to the nearest thousand. So that number, when I'm looking at it, it's going to fall somewhere between 36,000 and 37,000. Yes. Now let's look at how it would look on a number line. What would be the midpoint on this number line? What would come right in the middle between 36,000 and 37,000? Angel? 36,500. So if I'm looking at that, now think about our rules. 5 or above, you give it a shove, right? 4 or below, we let it go. Well, what is my number to the right? What is the number to the right of the thousands place? Go ahead. What is it, Hudson?
4 and below.
It's a 2, which is 4 and below, right? So if I were to look on my number line, now we can go fill in the number line. We could do 36,100, 36,200. We could do all that. But I know that 36,219 is probably going to be somewhere around here, right?
Yeah.
So would I round it? What is it closer to? Would I round it to 36,000 or 37,000? 36,000. So we could say 36,219 rounded to the nearest thousand is 36,000. Okay, rounded to the nearest thousand is 36,000. It's important when you do those number lines. I think it's very important to at least put that midpoint there. Okay, put that midpoint there. Okay, so let's look at this. We're going to look at this same number. We're going to round it to a different place. So we're going to take 36,219. This time I want us to round it to the nearest 10,000. So what number, what digit is in the 10,000s place? Maddie?
3.
So we're going to underline the 3. Then we draw an arrow to the digit to the right. That digit is going to help us in determining what we want to round it to. Okay, so if I'm looking at the nearest 10,000, I know that this number is going to be between what two numbers? If I were ignoring all of the digits after the 3 and putting zeros there, what two numbers would this fall between? JJ? What do you think?
40,000.
Do what?
40,000 and 30,000.
30,000 and 40,000. Good. So we're going to put they'll fall between 30,000 and 40,000. Okay? So when I draw my number line, I know that I'm going to have 30,000, 40,000. What would be the midpoint? What would be the midpoint? Hudson?
35,000.
Yes, 35,000. Now my number is 36,219. So if I were to go kind of figure out where on the number line that would be, it's probably going to be about right there. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be 36,219. What is that closest to? Is it closer to 30,000 or 40,000, Avery? 40,000. So we can say that 36,219 rounded to the nearest 10,000 is 40,000. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute where y'all can write all this down. Okay, so now we're going to actually look at a chart and we are going to practice. All right, so we've got the number 349,562. The first thing we're going to do is round it to the nearest 100,000. What digit is in the 100,000s place? Now we're going to look at this on how to do it without a number line. That way you have some options. Hannah, what digit is in the 100,000s place? The 3. So we're going to underline the 3. And we're going to draw an arrow to the digit at the right, which is a 4. Now, our rule, 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, give it a shove, right? We're going to, or 5 or above, give it a shove. Okay, so let's look at this. Is that digit to the right, the one that the arrow is pointing to, is that 4 or less, or is it 5 or above, Gavin? 4 or less. So what that means is that 3 stays the same. Everything after becomes zeros. Everything after becomes zeros. There's nothing before it, so I don't need to worry about anything before it. So the number 349,562, it's going to fall between 300,000 and 400,000. This number rounds to 300,000. Okay? All right, so we're going to erase this. Now we're going to go to the next, and we're going to look at the nearest 10,000. What digit is in the 10,000s place? Paisley? The 4. So we're going to underline the 4. Then we're going to draw an arrow to the 9. So we're going to look at that number that the arrow is going to. Is it 5 or above, or is it 4 or less?
5 or above.
Give it a shove. 5 or above, give it a shove. So that means we take that 4 that's in the 10,000s place, and it's going to turn into a 5, and we're going to keep everything before that. So we're going to keep that 3. That 4 now becomes a 5, and what happens to everything after it? Zeros. So 350,000. If we're going to round this number to the nearest 10,000, it's going to come between 340,000 or 350,000. And this one rounds up to 350,000. All right, let's take this same number. Let's erase. I'm going to erase this. It's taking a while. All right, it is a tiny eraser. Okay, now we're going to do the nearest 1,000. The nearest 1,000. What digit is in the thousands place, Gavin?
9.
The 9. So we're going to underline the 9. Where do I draw the arrow to? Avery?
The number to the right.
The number to the right, which is a 5. So I look at that number to the right. I'm looking at that number to the right. Is it 4 or less, or is it 5 or above? Maddie?
Get above.
5 or above, so we give it a shove. Uh-oh. That's a 9. Where do I go with a 9? What do I do, Miles? So basically we're taking a 10, right? So now it's going to be the same. It'd be 350,000. Okay, we've got to take it to the 4. We take it to the next place. All right, and that we add it.
So we can do this?
So that number rounded to the nearest 10,000 and to the nearest 1,000 actually is the same, isn't it? It's actually the same in this case because of that 9. All right. Now let's try the nearest 100. What number is in the hundreds place? What digit, Madeline?
5.
The 5. Okay, and then I'm going to draw an arrow to what, Axel?
6.
The 6, the place next to it. Okay, I'm going to look at that digit to the right, and I'm going to ask myself, is it 4 or less, or is it 5 or above? What is it, Angel? 5 or above. That means I'm going to give that 5 in the hundreds place, I'm going to give it a shove, and it's going to become a 6. Everything before it stays the same. So the 3 and the 4 and the 9 stay the same. Everything after it becomes a 0. So rounded to the nearest 100 would be 349,600. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase. This is great practice. All right, nearest 10. What digit is in the tens place? Gavin?
6.
The 6. I'm going to draw an arrow to the number on the right, which is a 2. Hey, Jacob, is that 2? Is it 4 or less or 5 or above? 4 or less. So we let that 6, we let it rest. So everything before the 6 stays the same. So we still have 349,500. There's my 6. Everything after it becomes a 0. So 349,560. Okay. Y'all ready to do the next one? Well, we've got 2 more to do and work on together. Okay, so let's look at, do what? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay, so let's look at the next number, 934,518. What digit, we're going to round it to the nearest 100,000. So what digit am I going to underline? Avery? The 9. Then I'm going to draw an arrow and look at the 3. So if I'm rounding to the nearest 100,000, this number has to be rounded to 900,000 or 1 million, right? Because that's what comes after 900,000. Is that 3? Is it 4 or less, or is it 5 or above? JJ?
4 or less.
4 or less. So we let it rest. So that 9 stays the same. Everything after it becomes a 0. So this number rounded to the nearest 100,000 is 900,000. Okay, what about the nearest 10,000? Hannah, what digit is in the 10,000s place?
3.
The 3. So we're going to underline the 3. Draw an arrow to the 4. 5 or above, 4 or less. What is it?
4 or less.
4 or less, so we let it rest. So that 3 does not change. Everything before it doesn't change, right? So we still have the 9 and the 3. Everything after it becomes a 0. So rounded to the nearest 10,000, it's 930,000. It is a big number. Okay. What about the nearest 1,000? What number is in the thousands place? Maddie? What digit?
4.
The 4. I'm going to draw an arrow to the 5. Okay, what do I do? What do I do? Does the 4 stay the same? Does it rest?
No.
Or do I change it? Do we round up? What are we going to do, Hannah? We're going to give it a shove, which means it's rounding up, right? It's rounding up. The 4 becomes a 5. Everything before it stays the same. So we've got 935. Everything after it becomes zeros, 1,000. 935,000.
So now it's not the same as the last one was the same as this.
Okay, what about the nearest 100? If we're doing it to the nearest 100, Caitlin, what digit is in the hundreds place?
The 5.
The 5. So we're going to underline the 5. We're underline the place we're rounding to. We're going to draw an arrow to the 1. Okay, Miles, what am I going to do? That 1 tells me to what? Let it rest or give it a shove? I'm going to let that 5 rest. So that 5 stays the same. Everything before it stays the same, right? So we're going to have 934,000. What happens after that 5? Zeros. So rounding to the nearest 100 would be 934,500. Okay, the last one we have. The nearest 10 for this number. Then we'll go do the last number. Okay, if I'm going to round to the nearest 10, what number, what digit am I going to underline? What digit, Hannah? The 1. Going to draw an arrow to the 8 because I'm going to look at that digit to the 8. Okay, what am I going to do? Am I letting it rest or am I giving it a shove, JJ? Giving it a shove. So the 1 now becomes a 2. Everything before it stays the same. Everything after it? Zeros. That's what I want you to say. Let's say it. Everything before it? Everything after it? Zeros. So we're going to have 934,520 because that 1 changed to a 2. Okay, last one, and then you're going to get to practice on your own.
Are we able to do this in decimals?
No. No.
So if we had a decimal number, like this number plus a decimal, can we do that or no?
We're not going to round decimals in 4th grade. We're just going to round whole numbers.
So are we going to round decimals in 5th grade?
I don't know. You might do some estimation, like if I have $5.95, you know, what is that going to be? What's that close to? I mean, you might do that kind of stuff, but I don't know if you'll get into ever really rounding decimals. Okay, now I have 604,186, and I want to round it to the nearest 100,000. What digit is in the 100,000s place? Hudson.
6.
The 6. Okay, I'm going to draw an arrow to the number to the right. Is it 4 or less, or is it 5 or above, Nathan? 4 or less. So I'm going to let that 6 rest, meaning it's going to stay the same. So everything after that 6 becomes a...
0.
So 604,000, rounded to the nearest 100,000, is 600,000. Okay, I'm going to erase that. Now I'm going to round it to the nearest 10,000. What digit is in the 10,000s place, Paisley? 0. Going to draw an arrow to the digit on the right. Okay, I'm looking at that 4. So am I going to let that 0 rest, or am I going to give it a shove and change it to a 1, Gavin? What am I going to do?
Let the 0 rest.
You're going to let the 0 rest. Everything before that 0 stays the same. Everything after that 0 becomes a 0. So it's going to round to 600,000 again. So rounding it to the 100,000 and the nearest 10,000 is the same. Now I'm going to round it to the nearest 1,000. What digit is in the thousands place? What digit? Axel? 4. I'm going to look to the number on the right, which is a 1. Am I going to let that 4 rest, or am I going to give it a shove? Paisley? Let it rest, because that 1 is 4 or less. Okay, so everything before that 4 stays the same. Okay, so that stays the same. Everything after the 4 becomes a
0.
So rounded to the nearest 1,000, you have 604,000. Okay, we got 2 more. We're going to round to the nearest 100. So what digit is in the hundreds place? Ricky, can you tell me what digit is in the hundreds place? The 1. So we're going to underline the 1. And we're going to draw an arrow to the 8. That 8 is going to cause my 1 to do what?
5 and above, give it a shove.
Give it a shove. So the 1 now becomes a 2. Everything before that stays the same. So let's get that. My 1 is now a 2. Everything after that becomes a 0. Okay, last one. We're going to round it to the nearest 10. Caitlin, what number is in the tens place?
8.
The 8. I'm going to draw an arrow to the 6. Okay, is that 4 or less, 5 or above? Paisley? 5 or above, so I'm going to give it a shove. The 8 now becomes a 9. Everything before the 9 will stay the same. Everything after will be a 0. All right, guys, good job.